I never thought family could hurt this deeply. Not after 72 years of living. Not after burying my husband, raising 3 children, and seeing them raise children of their own. I thought I knew everything about pain. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday morning like any other. I was having my coffee on the sun porch, watching cardinals at the feeder my Charles had built before his stroke. Comment where you're watching from. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. My hands aren't what they used to be. So I'd asked Sophia, my caregiver, to help me check my emails on that fancy tablet my son Richard insisted I needed. She'd set it up for me and left it on the side table while she prepared breakfast. I don't know what made me tap the little blue icon with the letter F that day. Maybe curiosity about what my grandchildren were up to. Maybe just the loneliness that creeps in when the house gets too quiet. Whatever the reason, I found myself scrolling through what Sophia calls a feed, looking at pictures of people I barely recognized and places I'd never been. And then I saw it. My own face stared back at me. It was a photo taken at Thanksgiving, me sitting in Charles's old armchair by the fireplace. I was smiling, though I remember how my arthritis had been acting up that day. Jessica, my eldest granddaughter, had taken that picture. She'd told me she wanted to remember how beautiful I looked in my blue sweater, but it wasn't the photo that made my hand shake so badly I nearly dropped the tablet. It was the words written above it. Visiting Grandma again. She'll die soon, and then all of this will be mine. Waiting. Inheritance. Jackpot, I read it once, twice, a third time. Each word felt like ice water in my veins. The room seemed to dim around the edges. I couldn't breathe right. Couldn't think straight. This couldn't be real. Not my Jessica. Not the little girl who'd sat on my lap while I read her stories. Not the teenager I'd helped through her first heartbreak. Not the young woman whose college education Charles and I had helped pay for. But there it was in black and white. Her name, her profile picture, her words cutting into me deeper than any knife ever could. Mrs. Margaret, are you all right? Sophia's voice seemed to come from very far away. I looked up to see her standing in the doorway, a tray of toast and eggs, in her hands, concern written across her face. Sweet Sophia, who came 3 times a week to help me with things my old bones couldn't manage anymore. Sophia, who Jessica always referred to as the help when she thought I couldn't hear. I'm fine, dear, I said automatically, though my voice sounded strange even to my own ears. I quickly turned off the tablet, not wanting her to see. To know that the family she worked for was falling apart right in front of her. Just a little tired. She set the tray down and studied my face with those perceptive eyes of hers. At 35, Sophia had the kind of wisdom that comes from hard living. She'd come to America from the Philippines 15 years ago, leaving behind everything she knew. Now she was working 2 jobs to put her son through medical school. You don't look fine, she said gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. Your hands are shaking, I wanted to tell her. To show her what Jessica had written, to ask if I had somehow failed as a grandmother, if I had done something to make my own flesh and blood see me as nothing more than a walking bank account with an expiration date. Instead, I folded my hands in my lap to hide their trembling and forced a smile. Just low blood sugar, I expect. This breakfast looks wonderful. Sophia didn't believe me. I could tell from the way she hesitated before stepping back, but she respected my privacy enough not to push. I'll be cleaning upstairs if you need anything, she said, giving my shoulder a gentle squeeze before leaving me alone with my thoughts. Once she was gone, I picked up the tablet again, my finger hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to delete the app, to pretend I'd never seen Jessica's post, to go back to believing my granddaughter loved me for who I was, not what I could give her. Instead, I found myself scrolling through her other posts. Each one was like a knife twisting deeper. A photo of my antique grandfather clock with the caption, "Can't wait to redecorate with Grandma's stuff." This old thing will fetch a fortune. A picture of Jessica and her friends in my garden. Future sight of my pool once the old lady kicks it. And worse, a photo I'd never seen before. Taken while I was napping in my chair, my mouth open slightly, looking every one of my 72 years. The caption read, "Tick-tock, Grandma. Almost time." I set the tablet down, my hands now steady, but cold. The pain was giving way to something else, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I thought about all the times Jessica had visited recently, how she always asked about my health with that concerned look that never quite reached her eyes, how she'd begun referring to my possessions as future heirlooms, how she insisted on helping me organize my financial paperwork. I'd attributed it all to love, to family concern. What a fool I'd been. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I heard Sophia's footsteps crossing to answer it, then Jessica's voice floating down the hallway. "Hey there, Sophie. Is my grandmother up? I brought some documents for her to sign." "It's Sophia," came the quiet, dignified correction. "And yes, Mrs. Margaret is on the sun porch having breakfast." "Whatever," Jessica replied, her voice dripping with the dismissal she always used with Sophia. "I don't have all day. Some of us have real jobs." I heard Sophia's soft sigh, then footsteps retreating upstairs. She'd learned to make herself scarce when Jessica visited. I'd always assumed it was to give us privacy. Now I wondered what other cruelties my granddaughter had inflicted when I wasn't listening. I took a deep breath and placed the tablet face down, on the table. Jessica appeared in the doorway, elegant in her business suit, her smile bright and false as a costume jewelry diamond. "Grandma, you look well today," she said, crossing the room to kiss my cheek. Her perfume, too strong and expensive, made my nose itch. I looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. She was beautiful, my Jessica. Charles's eyes, my mother's smile. But something was missing behind that carefully composed expression, something essential. "What documents do you need me to sign, dear?" I asked, my voice steady now. "Just some boring paperwork for the trust," she said breezily, pulling a folder from her designer handbag. "Dad asked me to handle it since I'm in estate planning. It's routine stuff. Nothing to worry your head about." I nodded slowly, thinking about all the routine papers I'd signed over the past year. How I'd never questioned Jessica's explanations because I trusted her. Because she was family. "I think I'd like my lawyer to look these over first," I said quietly. Jessica's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered. "That's silly, Grandma. Howard is so busy, and these are just standard forms. I'm a lawyer too, remember? I'd never let you sign anything that wasn't in your best interest." I looked into the eyes of the little girl I'd once rocked to sleep during thunderstorms and saw a stranger looking back at me. "Nevertheless," I said, folding my hands in my lap, "I think I'll wait." Something flashed across Jessica's face then. Frustration. Perhaps, or anger, before she tucked it away behind another brilliant smile. "You're being paranoid, Grandma. Is this Sophia's influence? I've told Dad she's not good for you." That was the moment I knew with absolute certainty that everything was about to change. Not just my will, but my life, my family, my understanding of love itself. "Actually," I said, reaching for the tablet, "there's something I'd like to show you, Jessica." Jessica's face drained of color as I turned the tablet toward her. Her carefully constructed mask slipped for just a moment before she forced a laugh that sounded hollow in the quiet sunroom. "Oh, Grandma, that's just a joke. Everyone posts silly things like that. It's called dark humor." She reached for the tablet, but I pulled it away. "You wouldn't understand social media. It's different for my generation." "Different," I repeated. "Is that what you call wishing for my death?" "I would never wish for that." "I love you, Grandma." Her voice had that placating tone people use with children and the elderly. Love. I'd believed in Jessica's love without question for 28 years. Now I wondered if I'd ever really known her at all. "I think you should go," I said quietly. "Grandma, please, you're overreacting." Jessica knelt beside my chair, taking my hands in hers. "Let me explain." I gently pulled my hands away. "Not today, Jessica. I need time to think." Her expression hardened. "Those documents need to be signed this week, Grandma. Dad's waiting on them." "Then Richard can call me himself," I said firmly. "Goodbye, Jessica." After she left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the china cabinet, I sat motionless. The house felt different now, heavier somehow. Upstairs, I could hear Sophia vacuuming. The normalcy of it was oddly comforting. That night, I couldn't sleep. I made tea and settled into Charles's study with our family photo albums. Page after page showed Jessica growing up. Her first steps, school days, graduations. In every photo, she was smiling, and I had believed those smiles were genuine. I paused at a picture taken just after Charles passed. Jessica stood beside me at the funeral, arm around my shoulders. I remembered how she'd stayed at the house for a week afterward, handling arrangements, making sure I ate. I'd been so grateful for her strength. Now I wondered, had that been the moment when I became an inheritance rather than a grandmother in her eyes? The next morning, I called my old friend Dorothy, who had been a legal secretary for 40 years. "I need you to look at some documents for me," I told her, confidentially. When Dorothy arrived, I spread out the papers Jessica had asked me to sign over the past year. She examined them carefully, her expression growing more troubled with each page. "Margaret," she said finally, "do you understand what you've been signing?" I shook my head. Jessica said they were routine trust matters, to help minimize taxes. Dorothy removed her glasses slowly. "Some are standard enough, but these transferred your lake house property into Jessica's name, not the family trust. Her name directly, the lake house. Charles and I had built it together, spending every summer there with the children. Richard learned to swim in that lake. Jessica caught her first fish off that dock." "And these new ones?" I asked. "Power of attorney," Dorothy said grimly. "Full financial control. If you sign these, Jessica could clean out your accounts tomorrow and there'd be nothing you could do about it." After Dorothy left, I began to notice things around my house that seemed off. Empty spaces on bookshelves where first editions had stood. My jewelry box looking sparser than I remembered. Even some of my best copper pots missing from the kitchen. When Sophia arrived for her afternoon shift, I asked her directly, "Have you noticed things missing from the house?" She hesitated before answering. "I didn't want to trouble you, but yes. Ms. Jessica often takes things. She says you've given her permission." "I never gave her permission," I said firmly. Sophia nodded, unsurprised. "I thought perhaps you'd forgotten. It happens sometimes with my older clients." She went on to list items: silver candlesticks, a small bronze from the study, vintage china, all valuable. All missing while I'd been at appointments or visiting friends. "Last month," Sophia added hesitantly, "she took the gold locket from your dresser, the one with Mr. Charles's picture." My hand flew to my throat where that locket had hung for decades. Charles had given it to me on our first anniversary. It wasn't particularly valuable, but it was irreplaceable. That evening, I checked my bank statements. Large withdrawals peppered the past year, transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. I called the bank and was horrified to learn that Jessica had been added as an authorized user on my accounts, withdrawing nearly $100,000 over time. I immediately froze the accounts and called Howard Mills, my attorney. He came first thing the next morning, and I told him everything. "This is elder abuse, Margaret," he said flatly. "Financial exploitation. It's criminal. Criminal." The word hung in the air between us. My granddaughter. A criminal. What do I do? I asked. File charges, he said immediately. Get a restraining order. I shook my head. Despite everything, the thought of Jessica in legal trouble made my heart ache. There must be another way. At minimum, we need to protect what's left, he said. Revoke all powers of attorney. Remove her from your accounts. Change your will. My will. The document that had apparently been Jessica's focus all along. After Howard left, I found Sophia in the kitchen preparing breakfast. For the first time, I asked about her life outside my home. Why do you work so hard, Sophia? 2 jobs, long hours, you never complain. She looked surprised, then smiled softly. For my son, Miguel. He's in medical school. His dream is to become a doctor and help people in our village in the Philippines who can't afford health care. That's a wonderful dream, I said. Yes, she agreed, her eyes bright with pride. He works nights as an orderly while studying. The loans will take years to repay, but he never gives up. I thought about Jessica, who'd had every advantage, every opportunity, handed to her without struggle. And here was Sophia, working her fingers raw for her son's future, asking nothing for herself. In that moment, something crystallized within me. A plan began taking shape, not from vengeance, but from a deep sense of justice, of setting things right. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since Charles died. I dressed with care, choosing my pearl earrings, the matching necklace long gone, and the blue sweater Charles always said brought out my eyes. Today would not be about sitting around feeling betrayed. Today would be about action. Howard had advised me not to confront Jessica directly, at least not yet. Let's gather evidence first, he'd said. Make sure we have everything documented before she knows we're onto her. I waited until Sophia arrived before heading out. I wasn't supposed to drive anymore. My arthritis made it difficult to grip the steering wheel properly, but the bank was only 3 blocks away, and I'd be damned if I let age stop me from reclaiming my independence. Mrs. Margaret, are you going somewhere? Sophia asked, concern in her voice as she watched me searching for my car keys. Just to the bank. I'll be back within the hour. She hesitated. Would you like me to drive you? I don't mind. I almost declined, but something in her expression stopped me. Not pity, but genuine worry, and perhaps we could talk more freely away from the house. That would be lovely, thank you. In the car, Sophia was quiet, respecting my privacy. But as we neared the bank, I found myself wanting to confide in her. Jessica has been stealing from me, I said abruptly. Not just things from the house. Money, large amounts. Sophia didn't seem surprised. I suspected something wasn't right, she admitted. But it wasn't my place to say anything. It is now, I said firmly. I need to know everything you've seen. At the bank, the manager greeted me with the false cheer people often use with the elderly. Mrs. Holloway, what a pleasure to see you. In person. How can we help you today? I'd like complete statements for all my accounts for the past year, I said, and I want to check my safe deposit box. His smile faltered slightly. Of course, I'll just need to see some identification. After I provided my ID, I was escorted to a private room where a young woman brought several folders of statements. As I reviewed them, my stomach twisted. The withdrawals were even larger than I'd feared, not just from my checking account, but from my savings and investment accounts as well. I need to make some changes, I told the manager when he returned. I want Jessica Holloway removed as an authorized user on all my accounts. Immediately. The man shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Holloway, are you sure? She's been handling most of your banking for the past year. I'm quite sure, I said coldly. And I'd like to know who authorized her access in the first place. He pulled up my account information on his computer. It appears she was added as a joint account holder last October. We have the paperwork with your signature here. October. I'd been in the hospital then, recovering from pneumonia. Jessica had brought papers for me to sign, saying they were insurance forms. I'd been too weak, too trusting, to read them carefully. That signature was obtained under false pretenses, I said. I want her removed today, and I want new cards issued to me only. After an hour of paperwork and verification, I left the bank with a small victory. Jessica could no longer access my accounts. Next, we drove to the safe deposit box facility where I kept my most valuable jewelry and documents. The attendant led me to the vault and left me alone with the metal box. With trembling hands, I inserted the key and lifted the lid. My heart sank. The blue velvet pouches that had contained my mother's diamond earrings, Charles's pocket watch, and my grandmother's emerald ring were empty. Only papers remained. My birth certificate, Charles's death certificate, our marriage license, and a sealed envelope labeled Last Will and Testament. I carefully opened the envelope. This was the will Charles and I had created together 5 years ago, leaving our estate equally divided among our 3 children, with provisions for our grandchildren's education. Jessica would have received a significant inheritance. Not everything, but more than enough to live comfortably. Clearly, that hadn't been enough for her. When we returned home, Sophia made tea while I sat at the kitchen table, staring out at the garden Charles had loved so much. Mrs. Margaret, Sophia said hesitantly, "There's something else you should know." I looked up, bracing myself for more bad news. "Ms. Jessica. She sometimes brings people to the house when you're not here. They look at everything, like they're making plans." "What kind of plans?" Once I heard her telling a man about how she would renovate after. Sophia paused, uncomfortable. "After you were gone." She showed him the antiques she planned to sell. She even had him measure the living room for new furniture. My hands clenched around my teacup. So Jessica wasn't just stealing items and money. She was actively planning for my death, treating my home as if it were already hers. "There's more," Sophia continued reluctantly. "Last month I found her in your study, going through your computer. When I came in, she closed it quickly and said she was checking your emails for you. My computer contained everything: financial records, contacts, personal correspondence. If Jessica had access, who knew what else she might have done?" That afternoon, I called Richard, my son, and Jessica's father. We'd grown apart over the years, especially after his divorce from Jessica's mother. He lived in Colorado now, rarely visiting. "Mom?" His voice sounded surprised. "Is everything okay?" "No, Richard, it's not." I took a deep breath. "We need to talk about Jessica." There was a pause, then a sigh. "What's she done now? What's she done now?" The resignation in his voice told me this wasn't the first time he'd had concerns about his daughter's behavior. "She's been stealing from me. Money, jewelry, antiques. And I found some disturbing social media posts she made about waiting for me to die so she could inherit." Another long pause. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I had no idea it had gone this far. We've been estranged for a while now, ever since I refused to give her money for that condo she wanted." We talked for nearly an hour. Richard apologized repeatedly, offering to repay what Jessica had taken, promising to confront her. But I stopped him. "No, don't say anything to her yet. I'm handling this my way." After hanging up, I sat in Charles's study, staring at his portrait above the fireplace. "What would you do, Charles?" I whispered. He had always believed in giving people second chances, but he also believed in consequences. My gaze fell on the small desk where Sophia sometimes sat to write letters during her lunch break. A notebook lay open, filled with her neat handwriting. Lists of expenses mostly. Miguel's tuition payments, rent, utilities. Everything carefully budgeted down, to the last dollar. I remembered what Sophia had told me about her son, about his dreams of helping others, about the crushing student loans that would follow him for decades. a plan began forming in my mind. Not revenge exactly, but justice. A way to honor Charles's belief in consequences while doing something truly meaningful with what Jessica had coveted so desperately. I picked up the phone and called Howard again. "I need a new will," I said when he answered. "And I need it done quickly and quietly." 2 days passed without word from Jessica. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits with documents for me to sign. The silence should have been a relief, but it made me uneasy. Jessica wasn't one to give up easily, especially when money was involved. Howard had moved quickly on the new will and financial protections. My accounts were secure now, with two-factor authentication and alerts set up to notify both Howard and me of any unusual activity. I'd also arranged for a home security system to be installed the following week. But while Jessica stayed away, my relationship with Sophia was evolving in unexpected ways. I found myself looking forward to her arrival each morning, not just for the help she provided, but for her company. "Mrs. Margaret," she said one morning as she set down my breakfast tray. "You seem different lately. More." She searched for the right word. "Determined." I smiled. "I suppose I am. It's been a long time since I've felt this clear-headed." She nodded, turning to leave, but I caught her hand. "Sophia, would you join me? Just for a few minutes. I'd like to talk." She hesitated, then sat down across from me, smoothing her skirt, nervously. "Tell me more about Miguel," I said. "How did he decide to become a doctor?" Her face softened at the mention of her son. "When he was 8, my father became very ill. Our village had no doctor, and the nearest hospital was 3 hours away, by the time we got him there." She swallowed hard. Miguel decided then that no one should die because medical care was too far away. As she spoke about her son's determination, his top grades despite working full-time, his volunteer work at free clinics, I felt something shifting inside me, a clarity of purpose I hadn't experienced since Charles was alive. "I'd like to meet him someday," I said. Sophia looked surprised, then pleased. "He would be honored, Mrs. Margaret." That afternoon, Jessica finally called. I let it go to voicemail, then listened as her voice filled my kitchen, smooth and controlled as always. "Grandma, I think we got off on the wrong foot the other day. Those posts were just silly jokes. I'd never want to hurt you. Call me back so we can talk about those papers. Love you. No mention of the frozen accounts. No apology for the stolen items. Just a push to sign those papers giving her power of attorney." I deleted the message without returning the call. The next day, a floral arrangement arrived. Lilies, my favorite. The card read simply, "Thinking of you. Love, Jessica." I gave the flowers to Sophia to take home. When Jessica showed up unannounced that evening, I was prepared. I'd asked Sophia to stay late, ostensibly to help me organize photo albums, but really because I wanted a witness to whatever might unfold. "Grandma!" Jessica exclaimed when I opened the door. She held out a bakery box. "I brought those lemon tarts you love." I took the box but didn't invite her in. "It's late, Jessica. I was about to go to bed." She peered past me into the house, spotting Sophia in the living room. Something cold flashed in her eyes before her smile returned. "I just need a few minutes of your time." She lowered her voice. "In private." "Anything you have to say can be said in front of Sophia," I replied, stepping back to let her in. Jessica's smile tightened as she followed me to the living room. She set her purse down on the coffee table and perched on the edge of the sofa. All business now. "I've been trying to reach you," she said. "Did you get my messages?" I did. And the flowers. They were lovely. Sophia took them home to brighten her apartment. Jessica's gaze flickered to Sophia, who was quietly organizing photos nearby, pretending not to listen. I wanted to explain about those social media posts, Jessica continued. They were just stupid jokes, dark humor. Everyone my age posts stuff like that. I understand, I said calmly. Her eyebrows rose in surprise. You do? Yes. I understand exactly what they were. She relaxed slightly, reaching for her purse. Great. Then maybe we can go ahead with those papers I left. They really do need to be signed this week. No. The single word hung in the air between us. Jessica's smile faltered. What do you mean, no? I mean I won't be signing any more papers. Jessica. Not now, not ever. She stared at me, confusion giving way to something harder. Grandma, these aren't optional. They're necessary for managing your estate properly. My estate is being managed just fine without your help, I said. In fact, I've made some changes recently. Howard has been very helpful. At the mention of my lawyer, Jessica's composure cracked. You went to Howard? Why would you do that without telling me? The same reason you accessed my accounts without telling me. The same reason you took items from my home without asking. The same reason you made plans to redecorate my house while I'm still living in it. Her face drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, I said, my voice sharper than I'd intended. I've seen the bank statements. I've documented the missing items. I know about the men you've brought here to measure for new furniture. Jessica's eyes darted to Sophia, who was no longer pretending not to listen. You believe the help over your own granddaughter? She's obviously making things up to turn you against me. Sophia has never lied to me, I replied. Unlike you. Jessica stood abruptly, hands clenched at her sides. You're confused, Grandma. You're getting things mixed up. This is exactly why you need me to handle your affairs. I rose as well, meeting her gaze steadily. Despite my arthritis, despite my age, I stood straight and tall. I'm not confused, Jessica. For the first time. In years, I see everything very clearly. Dad will hear about this, she threatened. He'll make you understand. Richard already knows everything, I replied. We had a long talk yesterday. That caught her off guard. She opened her mouth, closed it, then snatched up her purse. This isn't over, she snapped. You need me, whether you realize it or not. No, I said quietly. I don't. After she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, Sophia and I sat in silence for a long moment. Are you all right, Mrs. Margaret? She finally asked. I was surprised to realize that I was. Despite the confrontation, despite Jessica's anger, I felt lighter than I had in years. The burden of pretending everything was fine, of not seeing what was right in front of me, had been lifted. I'm better than all right, I told her. I think I'm finally awake. That night, I slept more soundly than I had since Charles died. When I woke, sunlight was streaming through my curtains, and the birds were singing in the oak tree outside my window. For the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about the future. I spent the morning going through old photo albums. Not with sadness, but with a sense of appreciation for the life Charles and I had built. By the time Sophia arrived, I had filled a box with photos to be digitized and preserved. Good morning, Mrs. Margaret, she greeted me, hanging up her coat. You're up early today. I have something important to ask you, I said, gesturing for her to join me at the kitchen table. Something about your son. I'd like to meet Miguel, I said to Sophia. Would that be possible? Her eyes widened with surprise. Of course, Mrs. Margaret. He would be honored. But may I ask why? I smiled, taking a sip of my morning tea. Let's just say I have some ideas I'd like to discuss with him. Does he have any free time this week? Sophia hesitated, clearly curious but too polite to press further. He has Thursday evening off from the hospital. I could bring him for dinner, if that would be convenient. Perfect, I said. I'll look forward to it. The days leading up to Thursday passed quietly. Jessica continued her campaign of voicemails and text messages, alternating between saccharine concern and thinly veiled threats. I saved each one, forwarding them to Howard as evidence of her escalating behavior. Richard called twice, genuinely upset about Jessica's actions. "I don't know where I went wrong with her," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "Her mother and I gave her everything. Maybe that was part of the problem," I suggested gently. "Sometimes having everything handed to you makes it harder to value anything." On Wednesday, Howard came by with the finalized documents. We sat in Charles's study, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the polished desk where my husband had once worked. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Margaret?" Howard asked, adjusting his reading glasses as he spread the papers before me. "It's quite unorthodox." "I've never been more certain of anything," I replied, picking up the pen. "Charles always said we should make a difference with what we have. This feels right." Howard watched as I signed each document, his expression a mixture of concern and admiration. "Jessica won't take this lying down, you know. She'll contest it." "Let her try," I said, initialing the final page. "The changes are all perfectly legal, and I've had a thorough cognitive assessment to establish that I'm of sound mind. Besides, what would her argument be? That I should leave my estate to someone who's been stealing from me and waiting for me to die?" Howard chuckled, gathering the signed papers. "When you put it that way. Still, prepare yourself for a fight." "I've been preparing my whole life, Howard. I just didn't know it until now." Thursday evening arrived, and with it, Sophia and Miguel. He was a handsome young man, tall and slender, with his mother's kind eyes and a quiet dignity that impressed me immediately. He arrived in scrubs, having come directly from his shift at the hospital. "I apologize for my appearance, Mrs. Holloway," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Mom said it was important that I meet you today, so I came straight from work." "Please, call me Margaret," I insisted, leading them into the dining room where I'd had Sophia set 3 places earlier. "And I'm delighted you could make it. How is medical school treating you?" Over dinner, Miguel spoke passionately about his studies, his work at the hospital, and his dreams for the future. Unlike Jessica, who viewed her law career primarily as a path to wealth and status, Miguel saw medicine as a calling, a way to make a tangible difference in people's lives. "The hardest part," he admitted, "is knowing how much Mom sacrifices for my education. She works too hard." Sophia shook her head. "It's not a sacrifice when it's for someone you love." I felt a lump form in my throat at her words. How different they were from Jessica's view of family as something to exploit. After dessert, I asked Miguel to join me in the study. Sophia started to rise as well, but I gently motioned for her to stay seated. "Just Miguel and I for a moment, if that's all right." In Charles's study, I gestured for Miguel to take a seat across from me. He perched nervously on the edge of the leather chair, looking around at the book-lined walls and family photographs. "Miguel," I began, "your mother has worked for me for 3 years now. In that time, she has shown me nothing but kindness, honesty, and dignity. She speaks of you with such pride, and after meeting you, I can see why." He ducked his head, embarrassed by the praise. "Thank you, Mrs. Margaret. My mother thinks very highly of you as well." I leaned forward, folding my hands on the desk. "I'm going to be direct with you, Miguel. How much debt will you have when you finish medical school?" He blinked, taken aback by the personal question. Well, close to $300,000, I expect. Maybe more." "And that doesn't discourage you? Make you reconsider your plans to work in underserved communities rather than a lucrative private practice?" "No," he said firmly. "I'll find a way to make it work. The debt is worth it if I can help people who need it most." I nodded, satisfied with his answer. "What would you say if I told you I wanted to pay off your medical school debt, all of it, and establish a fund for your clinic in the Philippines? Miguel's mouth fell open. He stared at me, speechless for a long moment. I don't understand. Why would you do that? Because I believe in what you're doing, I said simply. And because your mother has shown me more genuine care and respect than some members of my own family. I explained to him, briefly, what had been happening with Jessica. How she had systematically stolen from me, manipulated me, and plotted to take everything the moment I died. I've revised my will, I told him. Most of my estate will go to a foundation that will support medical care in underserved communities. Your education and clinic will be the first projects it funds. Sophia will receive this house and enough money to live comfortably for the rest of her life. Miguel shook his head in disbelief. This is too much. We can't accept. You can and you will, I said firmly. Charles and I built our fortune to do good in this world. Your mother and you embody the values we held dear. Hard work, compassion, integrity. I can think of no better legacy. When we returned to the dining room, Sophia took one look at her son's stunned expression and rose from her chair, alarmed. What's wrong? What happened? I smiled reassuringly. Nothing's wrong, Sophia. I've just shared some news with Miguel. That was a bit surprising. As Miguel explained what I'd proposed, Sophia's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. Mrs. Margaret, no, this is too generous. We couldn't possibly. It's already done, I said gently. The paperwork was finalized yesterday. But your family, she protested. Your granddaughter has made her choices, I finished for her, just as I've made mine. After they left, Miguel still dazed, Sophia alternating between tears and protests, I sat alone in Charles's study, looking at his photograph on the desk. I think you would approve, I told him. You always did have a soft spot for those who helped others. The peace I felt was profound. For the first time since discovering Jessica's betrayal, I felt completely certain of my path forward. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, about ensuring that my life's work went to those who would honor it, not squander it. The doorbell rang early the next morning. I knew who it would be before I even opened the door. Jessica stood on my porch, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into the foyer. Right now. How could you? Jessica demanded, pacing my living room like a caged animal. Howard called Dad. He told him everything. I sat calmly in Charles's armchair, watching her. And what exactly is everything, Jessica? Don't play dumb, she snapped. The will. The foundation. Leaving the house to the maid. Are you out of your mind? Sophia is not a maid, I corrected her. She's my caregiver and my friend. And no, I'm not out of my mind. I'm perfectly lucid, as the psychological evaluation I recently underwent clearly shows. Jessica stopped pacing, her eyes narrowing. You had yourself evaluated? Why? Because I knew you would try to claim I was mentally incompetent when you discovered what I'd done. Her face flushed. She hadn't expected me to be so many steps ahead of her. This isn't right, she said, changing tactics, her voice softening. Grandma, this isn't what Grandpa would have wanted. He'd want the family estate to stay in the family. I couldn't help but laugh. Charles would be appalled by what you've done. He believed in honesty, integrity, and helping others. All traits you seem to have missed entirely. I've helped you. Who do you think has been handling your affairs all? This time? Helping yourself to my affairs, you mean? I countered. The unauthorized withdrawals, the missing jewelry, the items taken from my home, planning my funeral while I'm still alive. She flinched at the last one. That was just planning ahead, being practical. It was ghoulish, I said flatly. And so, is posting on social media about waiting for me to die so you can inherit my things. Jessica ran a hand through her hair, her composure cracking. Those posts were jokes, dark humor. They revealed your true feelings, I said. Just as your actions have. You've made it abundantly clear that you see me as nothing more than a walking inheritance. That's not true, she protested, but her denial lacked conviction. Jessica, I've loved you since the day you were born. I've supported you emotionally and financially for 28 years. I paid for your first car, your private school tuition, half of your law school costs. I was there for every milestone, every triumph, every setback. I leaned forward, meeting her gaze directly. And how did you repay that love? By stealing from me, by lying to me, by counting the days until my death. I made some mistakes, she admitted, shifting strategies yet again. I took some things without asking. That was wrong. But I'm family. Doesn't that count for something? It counted for everything, I said quietly. Until you showed me exactly what family meant to you. She stared at me for a long moment, then walked to the window, gazing out at the garden. You can't do this. I'll contest the will. On what grounds? That I'm mentally incompetent? The evaluation disproves that. That I was unduly influenced? Howard has documented everything, including your attempts to get power of attorney under false pretenses. That I didn't understand what I was doing? I assure you, I understood perfectly. I stood up, moving to stand beside her at the window. Jessica, this isn't about punishing you. It's about doing what's right with what Charles and I built together. So giving everything to strangers is right? She asked bitterly. Miguel and Sophia aren't strangers. They're good people who work hard and care for others. Miguel will use his medical skills to help those who can't afford care. The foundation will support clinics in underserved communities. That's a legacy worth leaving. And what about me? What about your family? What about your family? You'll receive what I've already given you, an excellent education, years of financial support, and countless opportunities. What you do with those advantages is up to you. Jessica turned to face me, tears welling in her eyes. For a moment, I almost believed they were genuine. Please, Grandma, don't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, Jessica. I'm simply no longer allowing you to do things to me. She wiped at her eyes, then straightened her shoulders, the vulnerable moment passing as quickly as it had appeared. Fine. If that's how you want it, I'll see you in court. You'll lose, I said simply. Maybe. But I'll make sure the whole family knows what you've done. How you betrayed your own flesh and blood for the help. I shrugged. Tell them whatever you like. The truth will speak for itself. After she left, slamming the door just as she had as a teenager whenever she didn't get her way, I felt a curious lightness. The confrontation I'd dreaded for days had come and gone, and I was still standing. Stronger, perhaps, than I'd been in years. Sophia arrived an hour later, concern etched on her face. Mrs. Margaret, Miguel told me about Ms. Jessica's car in the driveway when he dropped me off. Are you all right? I'm fine, I assured her. Jessica knows about the will now. She didn't take it well, but that's to be expected. Sophia bit her lip, setting down her bag. Mrs. Margaret, I've been thinking all night. This is too much. The house, the money. It should go to your family. I took her hand, leading her to the sofa. Sophia, you are more family to me than Jessica has been in years. You've cared for me, respected me, treated me with dignity. That means everything, especially at my age. Tears filled her eyes. But I was just doing my job. No, I said firmly. Your job was to keep the house clean and help me with daily tasks. You did far more than that. You saw me, really saw me, when my own granddaughter could only see what I owned. 3 months passed. Jessica filed her lawsuit as threatened, but it was quickly dismissed. The judge, an old colleague of Charles's, reviewed the documentation Howard had prepared, including Jessica's social media posts, bank records showing the unauthorized withdrawals, and signed statements from Sophia about items removed from the home. The psychological evaluation I'd undergone left no doubt about my mental competence. The plaintiff's case has no merit, the judge declared. Mrs. Holloway is clearly of sound mind and has every right to dispose of her estate as she sees fit. Jessica didn't speak to me after that. Richard tried to mediate, but she refused to budge. She's made her choice, I told him. I've made mine. In the spring, I attended Miguel's white coat ceremony, watching with pride as he took his place among the future doctors of America. Sophia sat beside me, tears streaming down her face as her son accepted this honor. Thank you, she whispered, squeezing my hand. For everything. That evening, back at home, I sat in Charles's study, looking at his photograph. I think we did the right thing, I told him, even if it wasn't the easy thing. The doorbell rang. Sophia had gone home for the day, so I made my way slowly to answer it. A delivery man stood on the porch, holding a small package. Mrs. Holloway? He asked. Package for you. Needs a signature. I signed for it, curious. I hadn't ordered anything, recently. Back in the living room, I carefully opened the box. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was my gold locket, the one Jessica had taken, with Charles's picture inside. A note accompanied it, written in a hand I didn't recognize. Mrs. Holloway, Jessica asked me to return this to you. She said it was important. I clasped the locket around my neck, feeling its familiar weight against my skin. Perhaps there was hope for Jessica yet. A small step, but a step nonetheless. As I watched the sunset from my porch that evening, I felt a profound sense of peace. Life hadn't turned out as I'd expected, but then, it rarely does. I'd lost a granddaughter but gained something more valuable: self-respect, and the knowledge that Charles's and my legacy would live on in ways that truly mattered. Sometimes the quietest revenge is simply living well, on your own terms, without apology.